Hey, good morning guys, Autofanatic. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a test and tune video on some new brake pads that Hawk just released for the GT350. These are the Hawk Street 5.0 pads. If you guys are following my channel, I recently put these pads on my Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio and I absolutely love them. I think this is an outstanding street pad. I also installed them on a BMW F80 M3, BMW M4, and an Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio and an Audi S4. All the customers love them. I like them. So now when this was released, I called my rep. I couldn't even get these things from him or the Tire Rack. I have a Tire Rack wholesale account. Couldn't get them. So I bought these from LMR Mustang. I paid full retail. The front pads and the rear pads were a little under 300 bucks delivered. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop them out in the rear. In the front, I'm going to swap out my rotors to a set of rotors that I use my Carbotech 1521s because that was a very mild pad. And we're going to put those rotors on the car with the new set of these pads. But one thing I want to show you guys in the video are the Hawk 5.0 pads for the Shelby GT350 have OEM shims in the back that have the rubber texture. So I doubt there will be anybody that would ever have squeal noises with these brake pads on this car if you install them properly, as I show you here. So it has an OEM style backing plate with the shim already attached. We're going to put the copper anti-seize as always. We're going to slide them in and out. And I'll just show you guys a quick condensed version of the install. We'll do one rear wheel. We'll do one front wheel. Also, the wheels on the car, you guys can see, they're perfectly clean. They're perfectly clean in the barrel. So what we're also going to do is test to see brake dust levels on these pads with this particular car. This car is a little bit heavier. It's got a lot more tire than my other car. Being that I had the Carbotech XP10 and XP8 pads in my car for several months, I'm going to have to push back on the brake caliper pistons to get the new pads to seat because of the wear and tear and the difference in thickness. Now, whenever you're doing this, I always recommend just loosening up the master cylinder reservoir cap. Okay, loosen it up, so take it off, and then just leave it there. Okay, what that's going to do is when you go push on the brake pistons with the pads, the fluid is going to go through the caliper, back upstream, and any pressurized air is going to come up through the top. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to get the pads in and out of the car versus you not doing this. So that's just a little tip that I've been doing, and it just makes life a hell of a lot easier. You don't need a caliper piston spreader. You don't need any kind of crazy tools. You just use your thumbs and undo the reservoir cap and just leave it there. You can take this off, but I don't recommend taking it off now, especially we got a lot of stuff falling from the trees. I don't want anything to get in there or contaminate the brake fluid. So we're going to get set up right now. We're going to start with the rear, then we're going to jump over to the front, and then I'm going to come back most likely in a couple of days, and I'll give you guys some really good constructive feedback because I have tested all the brake compounds from Carbotech. I've tested the brake compounds from Ferodo and Hawk, and then these are the Hawk 5.0 street pads. And we're going to see how they do because in theory, what do we want in a high-performance street pad? We want strong cold bite. We want really strong bite when the pads are hot. We want good modulation, and what everybody else wants, they want no brake dust. So I'll tell you right now, just from using these pads on my other car and other cars that I've installed them on, they're going to give significantly less brake dust and a different type of brake dust, whereas the OEM pads have a lot of iron. You get like that rusty brown brake dust. The Ferodo DS2500s, that definitely takes it down a hell of a lot less dust. It's a really good street pad as well. The Carbotech XP8, XP10s, they give an enormous amount of brake dust. It's just ridiculous, but the stock beam power is absolutely incredible. So we're going to get started right now, and all you're going to need is a little punch, and I use my little plastic mallet to get the pad retaining pins out. There's the spring. Pins are out. And like I said, always make sure the orientation of the spring is in the right direction. This is pretty much universal, but on the fronts there's an arrow that goes up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take both of my thumbs, and where those pins were going through the pads, I'm just going to push, and this is retracting the pistons back into the caliper. And like that, they come right out. Okay, that's done. like I show you here. Pretty painless. So we're just gonna slip them in. That's why by releasing the master cylinder reservoir cap, it makes pad swaps that much easier. Okay, so we're done there. Make sure everything moves freely. Okay, so we're good to go. So this one's done. We're gonna just knock out the other side. All right, guys, over on the front wheels right now, we're on the passenger side front. My car has the caliper flexion stud kit. I highly recommend, if you guys would like to work on your cars or you want to make your life easier, it is the best thing that you'll ever put on this car. I've taken this car apart, as far as the brakes go, like 15 times, and no issues whatsoever. I didn't do the stainless steel studs. I did the hardened steel with the hard coat, and there's zero corrosion on these as well, and this has been driven through road salt in winter and everything else, so these things hold up really well. So something I wanted to show you, I already pulled the caliper off and I swapped out my rotors really quick. These are the rotors that I used months back when I was testing the Carbotech 1521s and the Hawk ceramic pads, because they're very, very mild pad. They're not very aggressive, so there's no scoring on these rotors. I don't really have to clean them up, and I just wanted to have a fresh slate. So now I have a 14mm by 1.5 open-end lug nut that when I put the rotors on the car, because when you pop the rotors off, there's going to be some corrosion around the hub assembly. That kind of keeps the rotor in place. So when you break that little bit of a tension seal, the rotor's going to want to go all over the place. When you try to put the caliper back on with the loaded pads, it becomes a real pain in the neck. So I always recommend using an open-end lug. This is just going to keep the rotor affixed to the hub, and it's going to make your job a lot easier. When you pull the caliper off, reload it with the new pads, and put it back on, it's going to go a lot smoother, and you're not going to be wrestling with it. You're not going to drop the caliper. I also have just the LMR box right here with another piece of foam, so when the caliper does come off, I could rest it on something soft, and it's not going to hit the ground. It's not going to put too much tension on the OEM brake line. So let's get started right now. I'm going to pop the pins out. And go very careful. If you have painted calipers, you don't want to have your punch slip and take a whole bunch of paint off with it. All right, as you can see, I released the pins on the brake pads, and I'm just rocking it back and forth, and you could already see the Carbotech pads coming right out. Just like that. Pull them out. Now, I'm going to spend some time cleaning these up. In the interim, just put the caliper back in the position, like so. Alright, so we got the Carbotech pads off the calipers, cleaned up, and they're back in the box. I'm just going to put some anti-seize in 3 locations. Now, being that these Hawk HP 5.0 pads already have an OEM type of shim on the back, it's an anti-squeal shim as part of the pad. This is just an extra step that I like to do just to make sure, because I don't like to pull the cars apart if I don't have to, just because I got lazy and I skipped a step during the installation and I get noise. Noises drive me insane, especially brake squeal. And usually brake squeal is pretty easy to fix. It's usually caused by a harmonic vibration between the pads and the caliper pins and the springs just not moving freely. They start to move and they create a high-pitched squeal. Before I put the new pads in, I'm pushing back on the pistons on the caliper just to give me that clearance that I need. And since we have the reservoir cap open on the master cylinder, the pistons pop in relatively easy. You're going to carefully guide it on just like that. So that went pretty painless, but like I said, the trick is you want to get the pistons in the caliper retracted as best as possible. Whatever I got from my gloves on the brake caliper, that's not really a big deal. That comes right off with a little bit of mineral spirits, like I'm showing you here. So I'm using my fingers to push the pads against the spring so I get the pin in there. The pins are a little bit of a bitch to get in because of the tension on the spring. But once you get one in, the other one goes in relatively easy. So start at the top. Make sure everything moves freely. You could hear the slack. That's from the pistons being retracted. Okay, so we're looking good here. So now we're just going to torque these to spec, put the wheel back on, and we're going to call it a finish install. 105 foot-pounds dry. Shop towel, and clean up anything that you got on the caliper. Alright guys, we're all set with the install of the Hawk HP 5.0s. One last step before you fire the car up. Let me get over to the hood right now. After you're done doing your pad swap, make sure your reservoir cap is tight. Make sure there's no drips and leaks, because like I said, if some people top off their fluid and you go to push the pistons back in, you can get this to overflow. Now, start the car up, and you're going to have to hit the brake pedal several times, because if you don't do that, you're either going to go through your garage, or you're going to hit somebody or a car or whatever behind you, because there's not going to be any brake pedal, because we moved the pistons in so far. Now we have to compensate for the pad to come back out and touch the mating surface of the rotors. So always start the car and step on the pedal several times until the pedal gets hard, and you're all set, you're on your way. So I'm going to bed these pads in today. I'm going to drive it for a little bit and hopefully put a few hundred miles on it. Then I'm going to come back, I'm going to show you guys the level of brake dust, and I'm going to give you guys some feedback as far as what I think the Hawk HP 5.0s do. Alright guys, just got back from finishing up my brake pad testing of the Hawk 5.0s. Just want to show you before we get started. You can see the rotors there. They got some nice pad transfer, and this is the brake dust that's accumulated on the wheels so far. So it's a little under 300 miles, 300 very, very hard miles of doing testing on these new pads. So that's the front wheel. Let's go over to the rear wheel. You guys can see that there. So brake dust is not bad, but they still dust out, but they don't give you that iron, orange, rusty dust that the OEM pads give you. So in the last 3 days, I drove this car extremely hard. I did a lot of 100 plus mile an hour stops. I also did the 60 to 0 stops about 15 times. I got some data. So before we go any further, part number for the rears, HB904B630. And for the fronts, HB903B604. Okay? So that's the part number for the GT350. Now, these particular pads are considered a ferrocarbon compound. I actually consider them a hybrid compound because they have a lot of the characteristics of like the Carbotech XP8, XP10s, but they have the street ability of an OEM type of street pad. Now, I got almost 300 hard miles on the GT350. So my car is also modified. I have the BMR lowering springs, which also is going to change braking performance because of the less pitch and dive of the suspension. I have 20-inch lighter forged wheels, and I have the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. Now, as far as what I noticed, as far as brake dust, they do look a little dusty right now, but the rims don't look as bad as OEM. And the reason they look dusty is because I've been pounding and pounding and pounding the car just to compile some data. I actually overheated the pads a couple of times, but like I said, they're not a dedicated track pad. This is a phenomenal street pad. I absolutely love them. I love them in the Alfa Romeo. I absolutely love them in the GT350 as well. So a couple of things that I like about this pad is that with the OEM pad, you kind of know where your limit is at the braking threshold between the initial pedal effort to full pedal effort. With these pads, they have a progressive, more linear modulation between the initial pedal pressure all the way up to the maximum limits. And when these things actually decelerate at the maximum limit, you feel it really hard in your body, you feel it really hard in your neck. It's unbelievable how well these things stop. So as far as the number data that I've compiled for you guys, so the car has a built-in little track app there. So the 100 to 0, I was not able to do on the street. It's just too dangerous to try something like that around here. 60 to 0, I did about 15 different runs. So here's the numbers that I've come up with. The first run, after I came off the highway, I drove the car 40 minutes north to actually do this. The brakes were cold. There was no heat in the brakes at all. The first 60 to 0 was 133 feet. The second and third were 128 to 127 pretty consistently. Then I drove the car through some windy, twisty back roads, got some heat into the pads, pounded on them a little bit harder, went back and I did some more 60 to 0 runs. Now, my tire PSI when I first was doing this was 37 front, 38 rear. I don't know why it was so high, but that's just what it was. And ambient temp was about 59, 60 degrees. And it definitely does affect a lot of this stuff as well. So the best run that I got with the 60 to 0 on this car was run number 7 and run number 9. I got 108 feet and I got 111 feet. That's 60 to 0. And the 108 feet I got when I took some tire pressure out of the tires. So then I dropped the tire pressure down to 32 in the front and 34 in the rear. And then I got down to 108 feet as far as 60 to 0. Now my car, I think there's a variance with the speedometer because I had to accelerate to get that track gap to work a little bit between 65 and 70, because if I hit it up to 60, it just wasn't activating. I guess it wasn't fast enough. There's probably a speedometer variance with the larger wheels and tires that are on the car now, but that's expected. But to be honest with you, when it got down to 108 from 60 to 0, that was all my body pressure and all my pedal pressure on that brake pedal. Now, after I did that a number of times, after about the 9th time of doing it, and I didn't let it cool, I pretty much lost the pedal and then it started fading like crazy. So, like I said, that's not typical daily street driving behavior, but I wanted to test the limits as far as what these pads could hold up to with the repetitive abuse and constant, deceleration like that. So that's just some data. If you guys want to, do it on your own cars, whatever pads you have, even if it's the OEMs, let me know what you guys are coming up with. Post it in the comments below. But 108 is the best that I got with my tires, my suspension, my brakes, my ambient temps, and all that good stuff. And that was the best run that I got to 60. Now, on open highway, I did some deceleration tests from 110 down to 60 and from 100 down to 60. The times that I got when we clocked it was between 3 to 3.3 seconds, decelerating from 100 to 110 down to 60 miles an hour. I also did a test from 80 miles an hour down to 55 miles an hour. That was about 2.3 seconds as well. So that's just throwing some numbers out there for you guys that are interested in numbers. That's the testing that I've come up with so far. But overall, here's what I want to tell you about these pads and why I think they're a great idea for anybody that is tired of the OEM pads, or you just need a new set of pads to put in your car. You don't want to spend the money on the Ferodo OEM pads. Number one, price. You could buy the front and rear Hawk Street 5.0 pads for the same price you could buy just the front Ford pads. I paid full retail. I bought them from LMR, Late Model Restoration Mustang. Now the tire rack, after I made a couple of calls to the wholesale manager, they're going to start stocking these as normal stock. You could probably buy them on Auto Anything. I left you guys the part numbers. You guys could do what you want with that. They have the OEM type shims on the backing plate. Zero noise. Installs perfectly like OEM. There's no issues. I didn't find any issues with the variance of the backing plates or the thickness of the pads. Installation is pretty straightforward. You can knock out the whole car in about 40 minutes on your own with basic hand tools. As far as bedding in procedure, it's very basic. Nothing crazy. There's no scoring on my rotors from driving them really, really hard. I see no hot spots where it's bluing. But I still think it still has a little bit more ways to go to get a fully transferred layer of pad material on the full circumference of the rotor. It's probably going to take another 300 to 500 miles. That's usually what it takes with some of these pads. But like I said, this car is not a light car. It's wide. It has a lot of grip, a lot of tire, good amount of power. It has a phenomenal braking system by design. The fixed bridge 6-piston front calipers are superb. They have enormous piston area, super stiff. There's no deflection as is mounted to the front spindle. And I can't say enough about the braking system in this car. Once you get so used to this braking system, you get into other cars and you feel how inadequate they are and how you want the GT350 brakes to be in every other car you get into. But other than that, that's pretty much my feedback on the Hawk Street 5.0 pads. I highly suggest them. I think out of all the pads that I've tested, this is the best street pad for this car. If you're going to drive it, daily drive it, spirited driving it, and even if you want to get on them a little hard, they can handle it. It's not an autocross pad. It's not a track pad. So in my particular case, with the Carbotech XP10s and XP8 combo, when I had those on the car, you know, I mean, that's a different league of stopping power altogether, but that's not going to work for a lot of people. They're noisy, they're dusty, they're also very, very expensive to replace, and being that they dust out so quick, that means they're going to wear out a lot quicker, and they're also going to wear out your rotors a lot quicker. So these are brand new on the market. I highly suggest for anybody out there that's looking at pads, do not go buy a dustless performance pad or a dustless pad for this car. You're going to degrade the braking performance. You're going to throw the braking performance out the window. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to have some acceptance of dust on your wheels for high performance brakes on any car. So that's just what it is. Don't go backwards. Don't buy this car if you're trying to just cruise around and you're just worried about how clean the wheels are going to be. I mean, I don't even care anymore. But like I said, the dusting is not as bad as OEM. And with my other car, my Alfa Romeo, I could drive the car all week and the wheels don't even really look dirty. I installed these same pads on BMW M4, BMW M3, the new body styles, and also an Audi S4. All phenomenal feedback from all those customers as well, and I thought they felt superb and better than OEM. So food for thought. If you guys want to check these pads out, super affordable. I mean, wholesale on the front and rear set now, I just found out this morning, is about $200 shipped to my door. So I paid about $278 from LMR, and that's really not that bad for what it is, considering that the Carbotechs will set you back about $500, and the Ferodo DS2500s, it's another great street pad. I think the Hawk Street 5.0 is a better livable street pad. It's got better modulation. It doesn't feel as hard. The compound on the Ferodo DS2500 feels very, very hard, and you got to get a lot of heat in them for them to really work really well. The Street 5.0s, cold bite, superb. Hot bite, superb. They have great fade resistance, and they decelerate this car like a freight train. For daily driving, street, moderate, aggressive use, the Hawk Street 5.0s are the best street pads that I've tested in this car so far to date in the last 2 years. I highly recommend them. Go to lmrmustang.com. Check out other vendors as well. Also, the Tire Rack will have this in stock very, very soon. And like I said, if you guys have these pads on any of your other cars, post some feedback. If you have an SN197, SN95 Mustang, or any other high-performance car, post your feedback in the comment section below. But on the GT350, they work superb. And I was a little concerned about that because it's a heavy car with a lot of grip, a lot of tire, and it's a wide car. And like I said, my car's modified. So like I said, for a 60 to 0 stop at 108 feet with a street pad, I think that's pretty damn good after pounding on the car for days. So I'll see you guys soon. Please like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned to the channel for more automotive content, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.